Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stay Creative York County. My name is Sarah. I'm with the York County Library, and I was looking outside my window for like the last week and a half and got some inspiration. We're gonna do some watercolors, but we're not gonna do just normal watercolors. We're gonna spice it up a bit. We're gonna warm it up a bit, I guess. No fire included, I promise. So we're going to be doing some watercolor techniques in today's video, something that really just adds a little something different or special to watercolors, and it's going to be using things you can probably find around the house. So of course for watercolor you are going to need basic watercolor supplies. This includes watercolor paper, watercolor paints, a paintbrush, some water, and a paper towel or something to dry your brush with. And then what I'm going to be using in today's video, I'm going to be using some cotton rounds and cotton swabs. I am going to be using some rice, just any rice. I have some white long grain rice that I'm going to be using. I'm also going to be using some rubbing alcohol, and I have a small container to put a small amount into. And I'm going to be using a colored pencil as well. Optional, you can use painter's tape. I'm going to be dividing up pieces of watercolor paper to do one technique on one side and one on the other, but you don't have to do that. But you can use the tape to divide your paper into sections if you do want to do more than one texture on a piece, or if you don't want the water to go or the paint to go in a certain area, you can create a stripey effect that way. Okay, so that's what we need. I'm bundled up and warm and inside and dry, but we are going to use some watercolor today. So let's get started. Today we are going to be doing some watercolor techniques and trying to get some different kinds of texture. So I have these tiny pieces that I'm going to split into two, so I can do one technique on one side and one on the other. And I'm just using painting tape. Put a line down the center. I am going to be using my watercolor palette, which yes, looks pretty gnarly right now. And I'm going to be using it to put down kind of a flat wash, so one single color. I'm going to go with kind of a darker color. I'm going to go with this violet, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to put down a wash. While this is still wet, I am going to be taking a little bit of some rubbing alcohol. I'm going to put it in a little bit in a container, just a little bit. And I'm going to take, I was using a flat brush to cover area on this wash, but now I'm going to take this small brush, dip it in the alcohol, and come into this and put some dots down. And I'm just patting down repeatedly in one area. We're gonna try just on the other side of the paper. So I'm gonna put a wash down. That's kind of wet. So this is still pretty wet. Add just a little bit more water to it. I'm gonna take the alcohol on my paintbrush and do this. Okay, yeah, there you go. Now we can see it. Now we can see that when I put the alcohol down on top of the wet watercolor, it creates these kind of circles. There's even kind of some discoloration in the center of it. So I could make sure there's only a little bit of alcohol on the paintbrush and do very small dots. Well, that's pretty cool. I like that. So you can see over here when it was a drier wash, it didn't really react too well with the alcohol, but over here with the wet wash, oh yeah, it's reacting a lot. That's really cool. I'll make sure you can see it up close. Oh, that's a lot of fun. So wow. So that was with alcohol. So I'm just going to use the water cup to rinse off my small brush. That'd be cool if you were doing, if you had a dry wash underneath and one on top with another color, you might be able to, actually we could try that real quick. Let's try that. So this is dry now. So I'm gonna go over it with another dark color. I'm gonna go with this blue, and I'm gonna get it wet so the alcohol can react with it. Okay. We take some of the alcohol on the brush up, and now with the wash on top, when I do the alcohol, you can see the color behind. So that's a really interesting effect. Okay, so we learned some stuff about how alcohol reacts with watercolor. Okay. So one thing I hadn't researched much is if watercolor will be impacted by Prismacolor. So this is a colored pencil. And so I'm going to just draw some shapes on the paper, some lines, some shapes, some outline shapes, and maybe some solid shapes. So it's in white, so you won't be able to see it. So I've got some lines down. I'm gonna go with another color, a dark color still, but another one that I haven't used. I'm gonna go with this bluer color and see what happens. Oh, okay. You can kind of see. You can kind of see the shapes through. And if it were a different color, I'm assuming you might be able to see the shapes through. Now, I don't think I have any crayons. If I do, I'll show them, but I don't think I do. So I would try this with crayons. You're gonna get more of an impact with that because it's more of a wax content. With this, you can kind of see the shapes. Kind of. I wonder now if I could go, I'm gonna let that dry and then go back into it with the color pencil and see if I can get a white color pencil to go on top. Meanwhile, on this side, I just wanna try some, what I'll call subtraction art. So we're gonna be pulling up some of the medium. I'm gonna be using this little cotton round in different ways, and also these Q-tips are these, there we go. Those are gonna be my little tools. So I'm going to pick another color. We're gonna go with this green color here. Okay, I'm gonna clean my brush off. I'm gonna keep this clear down here. Alright, so I'm going to take this cotton around and I'm going to take it to the corner here and just press it down. So it's kind of going to be a wedge shape, hopefully. We'll see. Okay, so it's a little textured. Let's see if I push down like really hard, if it will be more of a solid. It's actually just kind of taking up a little bit, and you can see on the cotton round, it's not like a solid wedge of color. There's some spotty bits. So now I'm going to take this and wedge it like this and use this edge right here to kind of like pull in a different direction. So we're pulling this way and you can see kind of a singular swipe. And then I'm just going to take it and pat it down. It looks like this is dried pretty quickly, so I'm actually going to wet this and apply it. And that is going to reactivate the paint, and it's going to lift a lot more of it up. Wow, yeah, that's a big difference. So if the paint was wetter, it would pull up more. Since the paint was dry, I put a little bit of water on the cotton round to reactivate it, and it pulled it up. So I wouldn't have to add water if the watercolor was still wet, so I'm gonna just put like a little swipe of color down here, and it's still wet and glistening. So I'm gonna take this while it's wet and dip it, and you can see there's more of an impact in that. And then once the ink is on here, it looks like I can kind of take, well, the paint is on there. I can kind of take that paint that's on the cotton round and move it to other places. So it kind of becomes a stamp as well. So that's interesting. That's something to consider. This kind of looks like a day at sea, like a cloud up here, and then this is the waves. That's interesting. Okay, so we learned that with cotton rounds, you can use them wet or dry. If you have dry paint, you can wet the cotton round a little bit and it'll pull up the paint. Or you could use the cotton round dry on wet watercolor and it'll pull it up more. And then you can also transfer that paint to other sections with the cotton round. So that's interesting. Something else I wanted to try in this area, let's see. I'm gonna stay with my cool colors. And I'm gonna, let's see, take a little bit of the dark blue and put up here in this corner. Okay, and while that's still wet, I'm gonna take my Q-tip. It looks like I can lighten an area, just a nice point. And I'll show you a close-up. I might try this on another piece of paper actually, so that we can get a darker color. Yeah, I'll try it on another piece of paper. Let's see if we can draw back into this with the white on top of the watercolor. Okay, kind of. Okay, I have lines going diagonally here. I'm gonna do that. Yeah, you can kind of see on top. And I bet definitely with a colored pencil that actually is a different color than white, a darker color, you would be able to draw on top. So, we've learned with colored pencil, you can put some colored pencil underneath for some relief work so that the paint won't go down on it, but it's not very strong. We've also learned that once the watercolor dries, you might be able to go back on top of it and draw with watercolor. And then over here we learned about our cotton round and our Q-tip. I think I'm going to try the Q-tip again though. So actually for this one, I think I'm going to do a combination of two things. My last is to use rice. We've used salt before and it created kind of a snowy texture. I'm going to use rice. So I'm just going to put one color down and then use Q-tips on one side and rice on the other, or possibly rice in the middle. We'll see. Okay, so I've been using cool colors. I think I'm going to stick with the cool colors. And I'm going to wet my surface because we haven't done that today. That's something different. So with this, I'm going to be doing a wet on wet technique. I'm going to be putting water down onto the paper first and then using some water and watercolor to go in. And as you can see, it kind of spreads and feathers out onto the water because watercolor will go where water is. Though you can use some dry brush techniques. So I'm just going to do this. Nice little area of color. Now, if I had a little bit thicker watercolor paper, I wouldn't be having so much bowing right now, but that's okay. I'll stick with what I got. Though it may come in handy to have it lay flat when I do the rice. That's true. Okay. So what we're gonna do so that the rice can lay on it if it's bowing up like this. I'm gonna take my painter's tape, put my fingernail right there, and lay this down. Oh, my finger kind of took up some paint there. If if you do use your finger to take up paint, remember not to wash your hands because there are things in paint you shouldn't ingest, so just be mindful of that. You can kind of finger paint, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to put a little darker area over here, I think. Make it a little bit darker. Not really wanting to keep it in one spot. I'm going to take this color and put some over here. So I'm going to take my erase, just a little bit, and I'm going to put it in this wet paint over here on the dark area, and just put it kind of willy-nilly, kind of close together too. So I'm going to take a cotton swab and go over here and start dabbing, and I can see the paint come up. And now they have these like lighter areas where I use the Q-tip. And then I wonder, I'm gonna take this right here, if yep. So I've taken the paint from here and it looks like when the paint's on there you could do that. In fact, I bet, hold on. I'm gonna dip it in the watercolor that's still wet. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, so that's darker. Like, it's gotten a little bit smaller and a little lighter, but that's really nice. That's a lot of fun. I think I could keep doing this. But I'm gonna try to stop. Okay, I can't. Hold on. This corner. So it's pretty dry. So now I'm just going to, I think I'm gonna use one of these little cotton rounds. Now that we don't need the erase to stay in place, just lift the paper up, and I can then actually tip this onto here. And it's texture, but there is a little pitted texture here. So there we go. We have rice and Q-tips, and also Q-tip stamps. Added bonus. Okay friends, that is the end of our Stay Creative York County video today. Did you get some ideas on some new watercolor techniques from today's video? Are you going to look around and see if there's anything else you can use? I would have used a few other ones, but I want to keep some other techniques in my back pocket for another video. But I will give you a hint. Maybe look into soapy water, bubble wrap, anything with a good texture on it. I will link some watercolor resources in the description below, including books and CreativeBug classes, as well as other videos that I have done in the Stay Creative York County series. So until next time, friends, remember to stay dry, stay warm, stay safe, take some time for yourself, a little deep breathing exercise every now and then. And as always, stay creative, York County.